love you guys. I'm a little technical difficulty this morning. Our camera is falling over and, you know, it's all good. But how are you guys? When you jump on, give us a hello, give us a hi. So if you don't know who we are yet, I'm Courtney Miracle. This is my husband, Brandon Miracle. We are part of the Shifters founders, I guess. So I was like, what are we? All right, guys. So if you have questions, you can drop them here. If you watch the replay, drop us a 2. If you watch the replay and you have questions, make sure that you post them. We'll come back and answer them. But we're going to start with announcements today. So last week we started Gen B, who's the other half of the...
Could be a third.
Yeah, well, okay. If we're one. We're doing math with our 8-year-old right now. Anyway, so Gen B is the other half of this organization, if you will. She posted a question. It's been one of those days, you guys. So she posted the question for the week, the survey question. If you answered it, you got entered into a drawing to get a prize. The prize is a 20-minute call with one of us. So there were only 7 of you that got the answer correct, which is good and bad, right? I don't exactly remember the question, but the rest of you said that you didn't think the FDA looked at nutrition labels, and that is not true. Okay, so the winner is Kimberly Fox. So Kimberly Fox, we will reach out to you or reach out to us, and we'll get you a link to book your call. You can ask us anything you want on that call. So Sherry, hi, how are you guys? How are you guys? I'm gonna stop talking. I'm just done. I'm gonna stop talking. I'm really tired today.
It's Wednesday in our world.
In our world? Nobody else's world.
It could be somewhere else in the world. I don't know.
Hopefully if you're in Australia, it's Thursday and we don't sound so crazy. All right, you guys, we're going to jump into this. Do you have anything?
No, I don't believe so. I think we'll help them just get started on this thing.
We just get to be real today. Hello, Samantha.
All right, y'all. So last week we left off. We weren't able to get to all the questions in our timely manner in which we tend to operate. So last week, I can't remember exactly who posed the question, but essentially it was talking about red light therapy. To be 100% honest, this is not our area of expertise, right? Like, our area is obviously talking about the things we're talking about in this group, in addition to essentially strength conditioning. Now, red light therapy has been found and documented to be very beneficial on the essence of recovery and helping with blood flow and those type of procedures. You know, if there as strength conditioning coaches, one thing that we're very, very much in alignment with and things that we try to promote is trying to get the people we work with and those that basically hear anything from us is trying to recover more. I can't tell you the exact specific scientifically as far as red light therapy, but I have seen the documented sense of like it does help with blood flow. It does help with inflammation. It does help with promoting a lot more recovery type of influencers. So, you know, that is something that we have seen some of our athletes incorporate and have seen benefits from. Now I will say that doesn't mean it's 100% across the board. That doesn't mean if you start implementing it, it's going to automatically change your life. But, you know, and I think this corresponds to all the things we're going to talk about today is if you do it, if you do it, make sure you do it consistently and then have measurables. Like we talked about this last time, right? Is being able to incorporate something and just doing it once every now and then on a whim. You're probably not going to have enough consistency to be able to compare and contrast, right? So if you do it or to start to incorporate that, write down, take note, right? Like become aware of, you know, are you doing it for something specific? Are you trying to decrease inflammation of an area? Are you trying to, you know, increase other elements on there? Allow yourself to, yet again, I think if you watch us enough, you guys, we're going to feel like we're going to seem like we're a broken record of a lot of things that we tend to say is awareness, curiosity, try and implement things, be your own science experiment, see what works, right? And as much as we can, we're here to try to help. But yet again, this is not our area of expertise. So have seen it work, but you may consult with somebody who is a professional in those realms.
Yeah, I do know that I have a lot of friends in the holistic world that use it and rave about the benefits of anti-aging. So for all of you like me that are aging, I'm about to have another birthday. I do believe there's...
We're all aging, aren't we?
Well, yeah. that feel like we're getting older. So I do know there are some health benefits there. As far as like where you do red light therapy, if you're here local to us, I have a really good friend who owns a tanning salon, but they also have red light beds, which is really cool. So I can connect you with her if you want more details there. You can order home units. There's lots of places you can do it. But again, like Brandon said, the biggest thing we can reiterate to you guys is take action, have measurables, do it consistently, and then see if it works for you, right? Like that is everything. That's supplements, that's nutrition, that's exercise, that's red light therapy, that's cold baths. Like you are your own, you get to be your own special snowflake, and you've got to figure out what works for you in combination with what else you're doing. All right.
I'm sorry. I can't help but think of TLC, Living Your Red Light. I'll go into it, but I can't. All I'm hearing that in my head. I'm going to be paying out all day long.
This is the mood we're in today, you guys. You get the real version of us.
All right, so let's see here. Anna posted a question last week in the group. Wasn't able to get to it. Wanted to make sure that we were able to answer it in a little bit more depth. That tends to be our mojo anyway. So her questions were essentially, number one, how does a person burn fat? Cardio, weight training, something else. Okay, so one of the reasons why we formed this group, you guys, is yet again, there's a lot of disinformation that gets thrown out there for a lot of reasons for it, right? I mean, there's a lot of things that, have maybe worked on a whim, but over consistently trusting it for long term doesn't hold up. There isn't any merit to it. There's also a lot of things that get publicized, a lot of yearly things that tend to get a lot of promotion based off of the sense of monetary gain, right? And so the reason why we came to this group of what we wanted to help share is a lot of the things of just trying to get down to the nitty gritty and make things simple, right? Make things overly simple, because unfortunately we as human beings, we love complex, right? We love to think it needs to be this way super elaborate equation.
Complex.
when usually it's really not, okay? So when we're talking about essentially anything, you guys, is I think for the theme of today, it's being able to really come from a place of understanding, but yet again, it's starting to take the action and using it consistently, and also measuring it and seeing if it works, okay? So when it comes to essential exercise, okay, and when it comes to essential diet, nourishment, training, all of these things, is the reason why most diets essentially fail. Well, they fail for multiple reasons, but usually they come from, they restrict your biology, right? So they restrict you in a sense of putting you into a caloric deficit or a nutrient deficit. And basically for most of us is we want something faster than what it's promoted to do. And usually that leaves us malnourished, and then it restricts and it works against our psychology. And that's what we have found to be even more important, right? Like for the people going through our 8-week shift right now, this week, we're going over the 6 human needs and seeing how food actually meets our needs on a day-to-day basis, and getting you to understand a lot of these things, you guys. Most of the things I promise you guys are doing isn't probably on the fact of on a lack of nourishment standpoint. We don't understand how it's mentally, emotionally, and psychologically meets your need on a day-to-day basis. And I promise that's the biggest thing of this equation. If you can figure this out, not only does that relinquish you from diet culture, but you get to understand just life way more, all right? So it restricts your biology and it works against your psychology. But in addition to that, when we're talking about burning fat, when we're talking about losing weight, when we're talking about shrinking inches, whatever that may be, is we're essentially talking about your metabolism, right? And that was her third question, is how do we increase your metabolism? The biggest thing that we try to implement, and especially this is for the women, in that this group is a majority of women, and this goes for guys too, but especially for the women. My biggest suggestion, we stop worrying about being on the hamster wheel of burning calories and doing more cardio, and focus and shift your focus to getting stronger. All right, focus on getting stronger, because the more muscle mass you carry, and I'm trying to figure out a different word other than muscle mass, right? Like the more muscle you carry, the higher your metabolism automatically goes, all right? And the reason why most diets essentially end up sabotaging us is because we go into caloric restriction for a long period of time, and our body becomes catabolic. And so what it means is we start using our own lean tissue, our muscle, for the supply of the energy that we're no longer getting. And so our actual muscle mass drops, which actually lowers and slows down our metabolism. And so that's why we hit the inevitable plateau, we hit the inevitable wall, why we even go into further restriction, and we no longer see the benefits of the diet of what it was promoted to do, right? Like every other board, every other thought process that I've seen that gets promoted a lot is just restrict your calories, cut your calories, cut your calories. And I've seen it. Like I've seen athletes that have been working with other organizations that come into our door. It's like, well, I'm on 900 calories today. How am I not losing weight? And it's like, well, your body's more worried about you living and breathing and functioning than it is about you losing weight, right? And so not to mention, you're training, you're exercising, whether that be you're doing HIIT, you're doing Orange Theory, you're doing CrossFit, you're doing strength conditioning, whatever that may be. If you're trying to do the training program and get the benefit of it, if you're not supplying enough nourishment, your body's not going to elicit the response you are asking of it to do, right? So it's coming from a different level of understanding what is the design of what you are doing, why are you doing it, and are you implementing it in a fashion that's going to benefit you, here's the key word, long term. Go ahead. Sorry.
That was a quick shift. So, I mean, I think the other thing, you guys, is like when, I can't remember the number, and I should have looked this up before we did it, but what is it? I think a pound of fat burns like 5 calories an hour, and I think a pound of muscle, is it 20?
Yes, I believe so.
Back me up. I
think so. That could be paraphrasing, but essentially it's massively more.
Yeah. So if you think about, like, if you want to increase your metabolism, you have to lift more weights. You have to eat enough food to fuel recovery, right? You guys, you know if you've been around, you know my story. If you haven't been around, you don't. But like, I had an eating disorder, and then I was massively underfed for a very long time. And I was still a decent athlete. Like, I was doing triathlons, and I was all these things, and I was underfed, and I was skinny fat, and I was unhappy with my body, and I just thought less, and it doesn't work. And when I started actually lifting heavy enough, and it was way more than I thought I needed to be lifting, my body changed, my metabolism increased, my like physiology changed. I got physically smaller because I had more muscle, and I was able to actually fuel for what I wanted to do, and my metabolism has increased. And we talked about age, right? Like, I'm almost 45, and I'm in one of the fittest conditions I've ever been in. I definitely have more muscle, but if you go, I think we talked about this in a video, like, if you're going to the gym and you do the same weights you did 5 years ago, and you're not getting, Brandon might say I'm wrong here, but I would say if you're not actually sore, you're not actually pushing yourself. And this doesn't mean like you can't walk, you can't.
That's a line to get, because I think that it goes on the same standard. If I'm not drenched in sweat, that wasn't a good workout, right?
But if you're never sore, like if you're never sore and you're like, oh, and you know, like you're probably not pushing yourself enough. And I can speak from only my experience on that, but like I was lifting a lot and I never saw any change. And what I had to do was actually get past that point and actually lift enough weight to elicit a change. So if you're in your comfort zone, step out of that comfort zone and again, try it, feel your body, do different exercise and see what happens, because you will be happily surprised.
Well, I think if you haven't seen my video I posted last week talking about the theory of supercompensation, essentially of we break our body down and through the recovery phase is which we get the adaptation for what we're training for. If you're a person that is constantly going to the gym 3, 4, 5, 6 days a week, and you aren't feeling like you essentially, I hate the word need, but you need to essentially a rest day somewhere in there. The thing we always talk about with a lot of our athletes, whether they're a field athlete or whether they're somebody training for a marathon or whatever, is if you always train at the same speed, that's the speed in which your body's going to know how to elicit that, right? So the same thing goes when it comes to your training. If you're always doing the same intensity via weight, repetitions, duration, time, whatever that may be, your body, you're not creating enough stimulus most likely for your body, because it's during the rest and recovery phase, right? As much as we love strength conditioning, that's what we do. We have our own facility that works really, 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 really well. But it's the biggest thing is getting our athletes to understand of the hour in the gym is great, but what you do the 23 hours outside of the gym is where the magic actually happens, right? So if you're not actually promoting enough stimulus, because at the end of the day, that's all training is. You're just trying to promote stimulus so you grow and adapt, right? And it's the 23 hours outside the gym that's going to allow you to really stoke the fire and burn that going, right? And so I think this ties into some of the other things I've seen on in the group is, what's our thoughts on fasted cardio, right? And for so many of you guys that work out in the morning, it's like, well, I don't eat before I go exercise. Okay. Trust me, yet again, what you search for, you will find, right? Like you can find benefits of fasted cardio may help you burn fat. But if you're going to the gym, our stance on there is do the things that are going to allow you to work out and train at the highest level of your performance and your intensity. Because whether it's fasted cardio or not, I promise you, if you're able to perform better, you're going to see better long-term results.
And
right?
The gym is a lot more fun when you're like, wow, I did really well today, instead of like, oh my gosh, why was today so hard? So if you're not, and I get this, I work out early, I coach, and then I work out. I do better when I eat. And I'm going to be honest, I don't always eat, but I do better when I eat. And so again, like try some things. Give yourself, again, we hear this so much, you guys. The definition of insanity is doing what you've always done and expecting a different result, right? And we get that. That's your need for control and certainty of like, but this is what I've always done. Awesome. It's not working, because if it was working, you wouldn't be looking for something else, right? So you have to trust, and you have to be honest about like what I'm doing isn't necessarily eliciting the result I desire. So go try something else, because if you don't and you just keep doing what you're doing, you're going to get the same result or a worse result. So I know that's hard, because it's like, well, but this is what I've told. This is what I've been told for so long. I can't eat more calories. Trust me, I went through that. And it was like, okay, well, what I'm doing isn't working. So what's the worst that can happen? Like, this works less well than what I'm already doing, which isn't working, right? Or just maybe it actually does work, right? But again, I'm going to talk about this for a second. For things to change, you have to change. And you have to believe that you can change. Because if you do something and like thoughts become things, you guys, this is a woo-woo side of me, but it is true. Thoughts become things. If you are taking actions and you don't think it's going to work, it's not going to work. It's not going to work. I've done it in my life in building businesses where it's like, I'm going to put in like, I'm going to do this stuff, but didn't really believe it was going to work. And guess what? It didn't work, right? And if you try a new program, if you trust us and you start working with us and you don't believe you can do it, it won't work. I can guarantee it will not work.
Well, it's not woo. That's actually like yeah. I could, if you want, I could send you a study that they recently just did that for like 10,000 participants and found if underlying the people that were participating in whatever they were doing didn't really believe that they could elicit the change and essentially accomplish what the program was designed to do, they didn't follow through with it, right? Like think about that in your own life, right? Like if you feel deep down, well, if I do that, I don't really know if I'll be successful and I don't really trust that I'll be successful. What's the likelihood that you're actually going to put forth the effort that is usually required in order to do that thing, right? Like you're not going to.
Well, and I want to say this too, because Brandon just said this. So like, yes, Tracy, our minds are super powerful, but our mind's connected to our body because it's not just what you think, it's how you feel. Because you can think all the right things, I'm going to rock this. And your body's like, no, you're not. Like, what are you talking about? This isn't going to work for you. If your feelings that are connected are not congruent, yes, you need to think positive thoughts and you need to do all of that. But you also, the beliefs are in your body. The beliefs are in your feelings. And if you don't get deeper into what are those underlying beliefs, you can have all the positive mindset in the world, which like, to me, it's mindfulness, not mindset. Because you can, I mean, we've talked about this. We have athletes that compete that are like, they are strong and they are fit and they are amazing. And they show up and they're like, I got this. And their body's like, I am scared. I am anxious. Like their body's going, oh shit, oh shit, oh shit. That's gonna win every time. So you've got to learn to connect, which is why we're doing what we're doing with our shifters group. You have to connect mind and body and shift them together. And you get to stop when your brain says something, your body's like, like you get to go, okay, why is that? Why is it? What's showing up? What's the underlying belief? How do I shift them together? And it's not like you do it once and then it's let's just set it and forget it, right? Like none of this is set it and forget it, you guys. It's all stuff we have to lean into. But you have to have awareness around what are you really believing as you start to go down these paths and these steps. Like, do you believe you can change? Do you believe that it's going to work for you? Do you trust it? Like, can you trust it? Can you put your belief outside of yourself for a little bit if you know you don't? And if you can't do that, it doesn't matter what you do. It's actually never going to change. And that's the hard truth. And if you guys don't know us, we're really good at supporting, and we're also very into being honest and sometimes telling you guys the stuff that you don't want to hear.
Well, and I think I wasn't expecting this to go down this route.
Sorry.
Which tends to be the case. But honestly, there's 3 things that are required for us to have lasting change. Lasting change, okay?
Not 6 weeks.
It's not 6 weeks. Not what is lasting change. Is first, it must change. Whatever the problem is, whatever it is that you're trying to, it must change. Okay? The next part of that is I must change it. Okay? Now, the reason why that is important is whether you're doing the 6-week shifters group, whether you're doing, 8 weeks, 8-week shifters group, Jenny Craig, whatever it may be. You have to understand that you have to change, and you have to take the responsibility to change yourself. Even the people that we work with one-on-one, I'm not the one creating the change for you, right? Like, here all the time, like, I can't believe the change I've seen. I'm so beyond thankful for you guys. And like, trust me, I've had to learn to receive that a lot better. But at the end of the day, those changes don't happen if it isn't for you making the change, right? Because what happens oftentimes is, oh, that diet didn't work for me. Oh, Weight Watchers didn't work. No, when all reality, it's not Weight Watchers' fault, because for thousands of people, it has worked for, right? Like, our program has worked for thousands of people. But when we take it and we shift the blame onto somebody else, and realizing that we weren't willing to do the changing of our own basis for ourselves, that's where the limitation comes in, right? So it must change, I must change, and just like we talked about, I have to believe I can change. Right? So those are the 3 things that create sustainable, long-lasting change. All right?
Okay, we'll go back on track.
Right. So kind of go back. I want to answer. So basically we answered 1, and then number 3 was basically metabolism. So kind of getting back on that route, you guys, is yet again, we hear all the time as we get older, as you get older, it's harder to lose weight. Well, why is that? Because we lose muscle mass. Right? Like, just connect the dots real quick, okay? Just try to, connect the dots. If I'm trying to increase my metabolism, do the things that are going to promote that, which is usually nourishing your body, making sure, I promise I haven't met probably 98% of you guys out there, but just from our experience in 20 years, I could almost bet that the vast majority of you guys are underfed and undernourished. And even if you are calorically rich, you're nutrient poor, right? And so we had a couple other questions regarding macros. We'll get into that here in a second. But ideally, you guys, if we can do the things to promote strength, increasing muscle, lean tissue, that's going to increase your metabolism, which in turn, as you get older, is going to have better longevity and quality of life. And in addition to that is what the thing that we always try to promote within our general physical preparedness program is independent living, right? Because I don't know how old are you, but yet again, as I get older, there's certain things that I look at of on the essence of now having kids of you know what? I hope that I can play with my kids. I hope we can go skiing for the rest of my life. I hope to God that I don't have to have somebody pick me up off the toilet to do just the basic general practices, right? Like as far-fetched as I hope that is, that's still elements of what our life tend to go down when we're not taking care of ourselves, right? So it's on the essence of first promote health, first promote wellness, and the other things of which you guys are aspiring for will come in addition to it.
Well, and I think two things. So when I was 19, I sold snowmobiles. We owned a power sports dealership. And I remember I had a guy, he was 89. And he was buying a snowmobile, and he was funny. He was brand new 800, big snowmobile. And, he's like, those young guys that I ride with who were 70, which was awesome. But, he was like, what he said to me, and it stuck with me, he's like, you don't get old because, you don't stop doing things because you get old. You get old because you stop doing things, right? So if you think about what were you doing when you were young to promote muscle and metabolism and energy and excitement, and if you're not doing that anymore, start doing that stuff again, right? I still go back to have more fun, and your life will increase, right? So I don't remember what number 2 is that I was going to say, but it'll come back to me. Let's go to the next question.
So you go a lot of different directions.
I know. So that's my take. Keep doing things if you want to stay young.
Well, I think just what Courtney talked on right there for a second is ask yourself the question, right? Because so often we get into the ruck of I'm doing the things I'm supposed to do, right? But are you enjoying it? right? Like, are you enjoying it, right? Like, what can you do along the journey, along the path that you're on to elicit the things in which you want that are enjoyable, right? Because I don't care who you are. I don't care how much dedication, determined, whatever, all the lingo that gets thrown out there. If you don't enjoy what you're doing, sooner or later you're going to deviate off of what you're going, what the road that you're on, right? So ask yourself the question: okay, where do I want to go? Where am I at? Where do I want to go? But in addition to that, what can I incorporate that I can enjoy? Because it's a dirty word, right? We think that it should be this long, hard grind, and we shouldn't enjoy it. You should enjoy what you're doing, right? That doesn't mean that there's not going to be obstacles. And perhaps along the way, you can show yourself that you may actually enjoy the challenge and the obstacles along the way.
Yeah, what I was going to say, too, is shifting your focus, right? So we talk about this all the time, but like if you're focusing on being strong, that's a very different energy than focusing on losing weight, right? Because, I mean, we keep saying this and we talk about it all the time with each other is like, if you're focusing on what you can gain, you are in a different energetic state of expansion and growth and excitement and fun. If you're focusing on what you're trying to lose, like, that's contractive, that's crappy, that's just down. Like expansion is here, contraction is way down here. You can't even see my hand. So where are you focusing? And I lived that, you guys. I lived in the trying not to hate my body and trying to lose weight. And when I went into, I want to love my body, what actions would I take? And I want to be strong, and I want to be really strong. Everything changed. And chasing strength is way more fun than trying to lose weight.
Well, just like you said, what do you gain from that, right? Like, what does being stronger allow you to experience, right? Like, it will allow you to go skiing, will allow you to go to the mountains, will allow you to go for a hike, will allow you to move, your house, whatever that may be, right? Like,
will allow you to feel confident and secure and
like, those things tell you what you're going to get out of the equation, right? Like, okay, I want to lose weight. Okay, what are you going to get out of that? Okay, I might feel more confident. I might do, and yet again, this is why we're going through our 8-week shift is, okay, you might get those things, but I've seen it too many times, hundreds of times, where people get those results in tenfold, but still don't see it when they look in the mirror because the internal is just the reflection of, or the external is more representation of the internal, right? And happiness comes from the inside, right? And so I don't care if you lose down 40 pounds more than what you think you could. I've seen it. That's not the solution, right? It's being able to see what you get at the end of the equation, not what you lose.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. Oh, good job.
Good times.
So this one has been a hot topic, I think, especially as we continue to get more people joining the group, which thank you so much for joining and trusting us in this, you guys, is intermittent fasting. Okay, this is... Yet again, if you scroll down far enough in the group, you'll see like the board that we posted from like 1965 of like all the fad diets that come up every single year, and it literally filled up an entire whiteboard. I think intermittent fasting is kind of this year's new fad thing. All right,
it was last year's.
It might be last year's, right? And like,
flowing in.
Yeah, I could just continue. But if you look at all like every diet on that board has been shown to work, okay? But my question is the question we get: does intermittent fasting work? Now, what do you mean by work, right? I think that's one of the things that is probably more important is what is the definition for you when it comes to work? Because for my definition is if it doesn't work long term, it doesn't work, right? Like if it's not something that you can implement long term and consistent in your life, it's not going to work.
Well, and I think it's, what does work mean? Does it mean lose weight? Does it mean, because there are benefits of intermittent fasting to like aging and your cells, and there are definitely things that work there, but you have to know before you start something, what is your definition of work? Is it, if it's just weight loss, please expand to more than that and understand why you're doing what you're doing. I don't mean to cut you off, but I think there's tons of research about how intermittent fasting can have benefits, but I also think for a lot of people, it's just another way. I saw a meme once and it made me laugh. It was like intermittent fasting, just how millennials are getting around not having to eat breakfast. And I actually had to laugh out loud. But if you are someone who has been in a restricted place, are you just redefining your restriction? Guys, I know this game. I was a master at it. And like, if you're like, oh, I'm just going to call it intermittent fasting. Like, I've done it, you guys. I'm like, none of us are perfect. Like, it's like, oh, I'm just going to rename it. Well, You're just taking what you're doing and renaming it. Like, if you're still starving yourself and you're not actually nourished,
I've been healthy this whole time.
Look at this. This is amazing. I ate one thing. I mean, like, so you guys, you got to understand why you're doing it. What does it look like? And I think personally for intermittent fasting, because I have done a fair amount of it, like, and messed around with the times. Don't go like click on one of those links on Facebook that's like, if you're this age, you should fast for 20 hours and eat for 4. I don't think that's healthy. I think maybe every now and then, but like, do you have, what we like to look at is eating windows, right? Do you have an eating window where you're like, this is where I start eating and this is where I stop eating? I do think that can have benefits, like a 12 to 12, 12 hours on, 12 hours off, even maybe 14 and 8. Is that right? No, 14 and 10.
Okay, there we go.
Guys, I can't do kindergarten math today. But, you know, something like that, I do think can have benefits. I also think for a lot of people, for most of you don't eat enough. So giving yourself this really short window to try to get a lot of food in, you're not going to make it. And like, I tried some intermittent fasting, and there were times where I thought it worked per se because it kept me from mindlessly eating at night, which I just needed to bring more attention to. But like, if you close your window and you're still hungry, that doesn't make sense in your life, right? So I think, again, everything can have benefit at a certain time, but you have to know why you're doing it, what actually makes sense. You need to keep data, right? Just be a science experiment. Don't get emotionally attached to it, but like, how do you feel? Do you enjoy it? Like, for me, I stopped fasting because I was really bitter that I couldn't have coffee in the morning when it was cold. And that made me angry. And I was like, I feel like I'm in restriction. Like, I just want to have some coffee. So I stopped doing it because I wanted to have coffee. Lo and behold, nothing in my life really changed. So that's my take on intermittent fasting. There can be benefits, but understand why you're doing it. If it's for aging and for recovery, I do believe there can be some great benefits. But if you're just trying to manipulate starving yourself and eating less calories by having this shorter window, it doesn't work. That's my opinion.
No, I agree. I agree 100%. I like it's on the fundamental. Yet again, I don't care if it's intermittent fasting, Whole30, whatever it may be. The way those came about, there's massive amount of like actual scientific literature that shows there's benefits to them, right? Like, and not just on the basis of losing weight, but like, yet again, good metabolic function, clearing out your gut microbiome, you know, promoting good resting glucose numbers. Like, all those things have been documented as far as improving, right? But on the essence of what unfortunately, majority of what health benefits come out of dieting, or what diets were essentially supposed to be directed for, usually also correspond with losing some weight. And so mass media usually gets a hold of those and starts promoting that as the next weight loss thing, right? But yet again, the broken record continues to play. Why are you doing what you're doing? Start with the awareness, curiosity, and just see what comes through the door for you. And can you do it consistently? Because doing it once or twice or even 3 times a week is not consistent, right? Like, and if that is your consistency, it's not working.
Yep. I want to talk really quick, one more thing, because we're on the subject and it also starts with an I, is intuitive eating. So I did a 5-day series a couple years ago about intuitive eating, and I'm happy to post it. But my take on intuitive eating, as someone who lived in diet culture and lived in restriction, is until you create the connection with your mind and body and actually feed yourself long enough that you know what hunger feels like, actually nourish your body long enough. Sorry, but you can't intuitively eat. Like, if you are not connected to your intuition and actually what a hunger, like literally, I think I told you guys I was 28 before I realized I'd been hungry for the last 10 years. If you are not connected to physiologically what you need, understanding like this is hunger, this is excitement, this is sadness, like if you're not connected to that intuition and you can't like sit with yourself and be with yourself and actually like understand those physiological cues and emotional cues, intuitive eating is not going to work for you, right? It can eventually, right? It absolutely can eventually, but you have to create those connections. I mean, we were talking about this when I went through my program. There was this concept of rules and boundaries that we'll teach you guys. And it was like, rules are restrictive and contractive and you fail at them. And boundaries are flowy and easy and all these things. And when I first started, I was like, I'm just going to call it a boundary. It was the same action, but I was just calling it a boundary, right? And I was like, and I had to check in with myself. And I was like, did I really change anything, or did I just rename it? So if you don't, like, if you've been dieting, you're just going to keep dieting. right? Even if you think you're not dieting, your body is trained. You are trained to have a disordered eating pattern, right? Not an eating disorder, but you're trained to have disordered eating if that's what you've been doing. So when it comes to intuitive eating, it can happen. But first you got to heal from the diet process and understand what you need before you can trust your intuition.
Well, I don't care what it is. We always write it's Pavlov's dog, right? Yeah. It's the bell that rings and all of a sudden the dog starts salivating, right? It's everything we do is trainable. I don't care if it's in the gym. I don't care if it's your eating habits. I don't care if it's what you think. Everything is a trained sense, right? And so what we oftentimes, the first questions that we oftentimes ask people, and I'll tell you that usually the blank stare that we get back is, why do you eat food? What roles does food play in your life? What needs does food play in your life? And if you don't know or at least have some sense about that, right? Like when we had to put our dog down because he had cancer and everything else, I fully went to the pantry and said, you know what? I'm going to eat my feelings right now. I had to own it. I had to understand the outcome of it. I had to love the outcome of it. But in that moment in time, I knew it was meeting my need for feeling comfort, for feeling maybe significant, for just dwelling in the scenario, right?
For numbing.
For numbing, right? Same thing what we do with alcohol. Same thing with what some people do for drugs, right? Like if we don't understand more of not just on the physiological sense of what those things are doing internally, but more importantly, what they are meeting for you mentally, emotionally, and psychologically, just by definition, you can't intuitively transition to those things. And honestly, like our ultimate goal for every client we work with is to be able to have that intuition. So at any phase of your life, whether you're going through macros right now or whether you're going through the hand method or eyeballing it, you can actually come from a place of awareness and make educated decisions for the things that you want, but you have to understand it's not just based off of the caloric density of what you're eating, it's more of based off of what your emotional needs are in that moment in time.
Yeah, and I'm a huge person on intuition. Like you all have an intuition. Most of us have unlearned how to listen to it. So we have to relearn how to listen to it. And not just about food, but life decisions and all of that stuff. Like you are an amazing being that's outsource a ton of your power. We just have to learn how to resource it, but that comes from understanding and looking a little bit deeper at yourself and all of that stuff. Okay, we're on tangents today. But these are good tangents, you guys.
They're totally good. All right, let's see here. Miss Erica posted today, is it better to do modified versions of an exercise, full range or unmodified part range motion, i.e. push-ups, on knees, full range, or proper on toes, but a quarter or half range of motion when to switch? Okay, so Erica, thank you very much for the question. So our basis of this, you guys, is we always ask, the people that we work with is, today, what is the outcome that you desire? Right? Like what would allow you to have the best experience you can possible, right? But yet again, it's coming from a place of awareness, right? And so for some people, I'll use push-ups as an example because this is a pet peeve of mine, is I'm not a fan of push-ups on your knees, right? Like I have a graph that I can post in addition to this that will show you kind of different percentages based off of the angles and other ways to modify your push-ups. Now, the reason for this, you guys, is a push-up, obviously, most of us think of it as just an upper body exercise. But if you look at it from like the basis of what it is it creates midline stability because you have to understand how to properly engage your core, your quads. It creates, scapular control of keeping your shoulders from not shrugging up to your ears. It helps develop upper body strength. But it's actually, if you perform it correctly, it helps build full body fundamental strength. But when we perform it on our knees, yes, you are lifting less body weight, but I've seen more times than I can count, people rake out like 20 push-ups on their knees, but the second they pick up off their knees, they can't do a single push-up, right? And so for me, that says, okay, that modification probably isn't the best to do because it's not transferring over, right? Like my job, and what I like to look at as a strength and conditioning coach is, what can we do to modify it, right? Because everyone's different, right? Like not everyone walks in the door squatting 500 pounds and being super fast and everything else, right? Like most people start off of literally learning how to do an air squat, right? And then they build from that starting point. But my job also is to see what can we implement that is going to transfer over to the most things, right? So what we tend to promote is instead of doing push-ups on the knees, do it off a bench or like a bar on a rack or something like this. So instead of being here on a box, right? So the higher up I'm at an inclined position, the less body weight that I'm having to essentially move and press. But at the same time, I'm teaching myself how to engage my full body. The thing we always try to promote the first day people come to us is core to extremity, right? Like you may be able to press a house over your head, you can squat and pick up the world, but if we don't understand how to connect them via your core, and I'm not talking about the six-pack abs that everyone looks, I'm talking about from your shoulders down to above your knee, all of that musculature and everything else connected. That's what we're looking for as far as your core goes. We want to be able to connect that so when you go through the daily elements of life, all that strength you get from doing a push-up is going to help you pick up your kids. It's going to help you put your dishes away, whatever that may be. You're going to have transferability over to those things. Not to mention what we tend to see, and especially what we see with a lot of athletes that are transitioning over to like the court or the field. I'm a big believer in the fact of if you don't train it, our brains and our bodies work is if you don't use it, you lose it. Right? Like we think of, I'll just have these skills all no matter how long I go. If you don't use it, you lose it. Like if it's neurology, like your brain has neurons inside, right? That is basically nerve cells that connect bridges from one side to the other. And the more repetition you do, the stronger that neuron becomes, right? And so if we don't use it, that bridge actually gets weakened and actually.
Same for beliefs.
Yes, and it's so all these things are the same. Weird, right? And so if we don't use those things, then this goes for the same thing. If you don't use the range of motion, right? Like we see so many times, like people that are learning to squat, they get halfway down there, right? Like it always reminds me of a person that we had forever ago. He was this older guy who, loved himself on the essence of like, I want to squat my body weight forever in hundreds of pounds, right? So he just turned 66, goes over to the squat rack, puts on 600 pounds.
He was not a client of ours.
He was not a client of ours, but like he unracked the bar, bent his knees, literally unlocked his knees, stood up and walked in there like, great, I can still squat my body weight. That's not squatting, right?
That's holding the body weight on your back.
So, I mean, on the essence of that, you guys, is we want to be able to promote full range of motion. So if in turn, right, like we're here in Colorado, so like it's icy, it's snow outside. If all of a sudden I slip and my body's not used to being in that range of motion and all of a sudden I have to act really, really quick in like a chaotic and dynamic manner, if my body's not in a structured state via training of going through that range of motion, and then all of a sudden I have to access that at like 1,000,000% like that, that's when potential for like injuries happen. That's when potential of like that weakest link in the chain has the potential for breaking. So on the essence of, we want to promote full range of motion. We want to promote good passive range of motion. We want to promote strength balance between all these things to help negate injuries from happening, right? So there's a lot that goes into this equation, but more importantly, it's on the essence of what do you want to get out of your training? What's going to allow you to have the best experience possible? Is it an essence of, is it a strength thing? Or if when you get through a full range of motion, you're experiencing pain, right? Well, if it's experiencing pain, but we can go through a half range of motion so we can still get some benefit out of it, yeah, that might be a good idea for the day. But if you're going through that just for the sake of like, well, it's supposed to be full range of motion, but it's actually more excruciating than anything, your body's not going to allow you to do it, even if you want to. So it's on the essence of, yet again, why? Awareness, curiosity, and seeing what works best for you.
Yeah, and I think on the push-up side, what we look at is like you're just removing some gravity, right? The motion is still the same. You're just elevating yourself, so you're moving a little bit of gravity. But I know push-ups and pull-ups, there's a bunch of snow falling off our house. For women especially, tend to be more challenging. So maybe we should do a video on push-ups. I think push-ups are a thing that like 99% of the people that come into our facility do it incorrectly.
Yeah. How many would you like a push-up and a squat video?
If you want a push-up squat video. But like understanding, because to me, the more range of motion you can have, like I think about it, if you fell down and you only ever push up this far and you got to actually catch yourself, like what happens in that extra distance, right? Because again, we believe in training for life, training for things outside of this. And so how do we create things inside of the gym that will actually transfer to outside of the gym? Because again, you guys, you should be out having fun. And when you're having fun, things happen, you fall down, right? Like, so that's our thought. So raise your hand if you guys want to see a video, drop a please. And we lost all the light. Yes. Okay. Go to the next question. Oh God.
What are you doing here?
I'm trying not to screw up the light, you guys. Oh boy, there we are. Woo! So many things.
All right. So same in addition to that is essentially rest days. We talked a little about this. Yet again, you can scroll down. I went really in depth on the sense of the theory of super compensation. Just leave it.
I can't see the comments now though. You can just laugh at us. See? I don't want to leave it. Don't touch it.
Why did you have to mess up?
Here we go. You guys, technology is amazing. We lost like 4 of you in our conundrum. I'm sorry.
Okay. So essentially, rest days, you guys, yet again. What we mean by rest days and what I've saw as a lot of the feedback regarding that was essentially, oh yeah, on my rest day, do you take a planned rest day? Yes, on my planned rest day, I go do this training program. That's not a rest day. That's just another day of intensity on your body, right? And especially for a lot of you guys that I know that are doing a lot of aerobic activity, your heart is a muscle, right? Like your heart is a muscle that has to beat thousands of times a day to circulate blood and filter and all those things for you to survive, right? And so if you're constantly just hammering away at that thing at a high rate, you might be actually, I don't want to say more detriment, but you're not allowing that to recover, right? So your body needs recovery, your body needs, and she asked on there, would yoga or something like that be a good practice? Yes, right?
Depends on the yoga.
Depends on the yoga, right? Like
we're going to like a hot yoga.
Yeah, so like strength yoga and those kind of things. Like, no.
Slow stretching, yes.
Yes, like if it allows you to bring it down your rhythm, bring down, your sense of good mindfulness, all those things, yes, that could be absolutely very beneficial, right? Like good breathing practices, all those things will definitely help promote that better. But you just hammering away at another day of training, yet again, my big sense is that if you feel like you can go 6 days in a row at the same intensity, you're not allowing yourself to push at a high enough rate that you're not getting. And that's not to say you can't go for a walk, you can't continue moving around. But when you're training, you should be creating a stimulus so your body has to recover and adapt to.
I still can't see the comments. Sorry, you guys. If you leave us comments.
I had to touch it. We had this talk before we started.
Yeah, okay. It's not me. It was the low power mode, you guys.
All right.
But leave comments. We'll answer them when we're done.
So, macros. All right. So, this kind of is a good transition.
We have 10 minutes.
Actually, here. The plain yogurt. Okay. So, this is one that we get sometimes on dairy, you guys, is, low fat, high fat, what do you mean, the better? Yet again, our sense on there, you guys, is first off, at least 70% of the population is lactose intolerant, right? And so, if you love dairy, but your gut doesn't, you have it. I'm not gonna for us, I'm not gonna tell you can't have anything, but it's also in the same sense as if it's causing internal malfunctioning gut issues, that also means that it's interfering with the absorption of the other nutrients you're trying to get. So if you're having a lot of dairy in addition to having fruits and vegetables and whole, all the other nourishing things that you want to promote within your diet, you might actually not be getting any sort of benefit from that because your gut is in such disarray. And that's the biggest thing that basically controls what's being distributed, what's being absorbed, what type of nourishment your system is actually getting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I would say on yogurt, for dairy in general, and we both are this way, like we can have a little bit of dairy, right? Like I can have a cup of coffee or I can have half a serving or a serving of yogurt, but more than that, I don't feel good. So just, again, pay attention. When you have it, how do you feel? How do you feel if you don't have it? And then decide, is it worth it? Is it not worth it?
Well, okay. And I know there's a lot more traction regarding the nut milks and all those things. Like I'll admit, I grew up on a family that would have, a glass of milk a night before we went to bed, along with ice cream and everything else. After going through enough trials of my own over the years, I understand that I can handle about 6 to maybe 8 ounces of milk and I'll do okay. Anything over that, especially cheese, this is one that I would really recommend if you were a cheese goer. Be aware of how much. I noticed for me, my joints were a lot more inflamed. I became a lot more nasally. When I went to do aerobic activities, I couldn't breathe very well, right? So that was one of the things of I got to see not just whether or not my gut got in disarray, but how did my performance, how did I feel, how did my breathing, right? There was more mucus, all those things that get promoted with that, right? So
back to yogurt though, we would say have full fat milk or full fat yogurt because it's less processed, right? If they strip some of the fat out of it, it changes natural composition of the yogurt or the milk. So we would recommend full fat.
And I know that's going to spark some of you of like, what about the calories? Just preparing myself.
It's going to be okay.
It's going to be all right.
If you don't look at your calories, you would never have to worry. And we love you.
So in addition to that, you guys, I've transitioned over. I actually drink almond milk now, and I noticed that doesn't necessarily, I don't have the effects. Granted, I'm not sitting down and having a glass of almond milk. I incorporate that in addition to like a little smoothie or a shake or whatever I may have on there, but it's usually about the same 6 to maybe 8 ounces. Let's see here. The macro portion. Okay, so one of the things that I see a lot, and especially in this group, and I know a lot of you guys are coming from the atypical diet promotion thing, is calories, 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 calories. And there's a lot of it. I also sympathize with you guys and appreciate. I know the training protocol a lot of you guys do, and it's always about how many calories did I burn, how many of this, right? And we feel rewarded by that. My question to you on there is, okay, if you are tracking your calories, what is that telling you? Right? Like, what is that data and information actually saying to you? Right? Because if it's only saying, well, it's kind of the same thing of me stepping on a scale. That's only giving me a number. That's not actually telling me what the actual breakdown is, right? And so when it comes to macros, right? Like, and I've seen, we're transition, talk about something we're going to do here shortly. But when we're talking about macros, okay, think of it your calories, okay? Now, what your macros do is it allows you to see how that is broken down, okay? So it gets to see individually how much your protein intake is, how many carbohydrates you're taking in, and how many fats you are taking in, right? And then putting those things together via calorie calculation, that's where you get your calorie count from. Okay, so when we're talking about macros, we're looking at essentially your caloric intake, but we're looking at it from a much more specific point of view.
Which, when we look at macros, you guys, it's so much more about your hormonal balance and what the foods do inside of you and the micronutrients that come with it and the fiber and like, because again, that's always my example. We know that inherently we can't just eat chocolate cake, and as long as we stay under 1,200 calories, we're going to have the body of our dreams. It doesn't work, right? You know that inherently, yet we're like, trust me, you guys, I had a buddy that told me he was going to kick me out of my own truck if I said calorie one more time. I get it. But I promise you that caloric connection is creating this feeling in your life. If you can learn to let it go and just trust that what you're putting in, the percentages and the quality matter so much more than the total number. I promise you that. Okay. So to that end, let's talk about this really quick because we have 5 minutes before we have to be on a phone call. So we did a little survey in here and then on our own personal pages, and we said, hey, if we had
hold on. I'm kind of going on to that, you guys. I think it's important because, yet again, the question we always get all the time is, because this was a question that came on here, is what deficit should I be at? And I'm here to tell you, you guys might not need a further deficit in order for you to lose weight or gain muscle or do it. I'll tell you right now, in 20 years of coaching, I can count on one hand, 3 fingers probably, the amount of people that we've had to decrease the amount of food from. Every other client in 20 years, we've actually had to increase their nourishment, right? And for some of you guys, like I said, you may be getting enough food based on like a total quality or quantity number. But what we do with the macros and what we do with this is just shift your nutrient breakdown, right? Like your nutrient breakdown might but not just be in essentially the optimum range or the optimum ratio of what we've seen to be beneficial, not only on the sense of promoting the things that you want, but sustainable for like actual life daily activities.
Well, guys, the goal is to eat as much as you can and still maintain the performance and the physiology that you desire, right?
Increase it.
Like exactly. Like when we both worked with macro coaches for a long time because again, we also need accountability. When you have somebody to answer to, it's different. But what did yours change? Like
when I first started, I think my protein number was 170. My carbohydrate number was like 250 and my fat was like 50. And then it was over the course of a year. Like I did weekly check-ins. I had conversations with my coach. It was a very in-depth one-on-one experience. And this went for about a year and a half. my numbers went from that to literally I finished up. I was getting probably 200. I think it was 235 grams of protein. I was upwards of almost 500 grams of carbohydrates, and I was up at about 65 to 70 grams of fat. Right, like my numbers literally doubled over the course of the year. Right, but it took that initial baseline for me to figure out like, I can eat and I can handle a lot of food. I also carry a decent amount of muscle mass for my size, right? So yet again, if you promote more muscle, you get rewarded with more food.
Right, which we should all want, right? It's not less, it's actually more, and it's more fun to eat and have good food and feel good. Okay, so on that note, you guys, we put out a survey on here on our personal pages, said, hey, if we had a macro workshop, would you guys want to come? The response was very quickly and very rapidly, yeah, yes, please. So we managed to put this together. It's Monday night, this coming Monday, which is January 31st, which is perfect for everyone that did a resolution and is feeling like maybe now what, or it didn't go so well, right? Yeah. So it's January 31st, Monday night. It's 5:30 Mountain Standard Time to about 7:30. We're gonna be honest, you guys, we can't get anything done in an hour, so 2-hour workshop. But we're gonna go through the basics of like, what are macros? Because a lot of you are like, I don't even know what a macro is. So what are they? Why do you need them? Okay, 3 parts to this. What are they? Why do you need them? How do you calculate your own? And then again, how do you adjust and understand? Because we're so big on learning, you guys. It's about understanding. We can tell you exactly what to do. If you don't understand it, you're not going to do it, and it's not going to work long term. So how do you find yours? How do you understand yours? We're going to give you guys some calculations to figure that out. How do you track all those questions, right? And then what exactly is a strategy that you can deploy so that you will actually, be able to use this, be able to understand this, and quite honestly, for most of you guys, eventually not have to do it. But it's a really good way to get some understanding, get some learning, get all your questions answered. So we'll post a link below. If you can't come live, don't worry, it will be recorded. We may have time for questions and answers at the end, so there's definitely benefit of coming live. But if you can't make it live, it's going to be there for you. You'll have it forever. You can go back to it. So if you're like, okay, this is my first phase, and 3 months later, go watch it again and go, what did I miss? You're going to have it for a lifetime. So it's $97 for the workshop, which is a killer deal. So get yourself registered. Like I said, it will be on Zoom, so we can see you guys, so we can walk through all the things. We'll ask for questions before, so we really make sure that we get your guys' questions answered. But make sure that you join us live on Monday. Drop any other questions that you want us to go live next week in this group. So 11 o'clock every Wednesday, we will be live. Here's our reminder for our meeting. So we appreciate you guys. Let us know if you have any questions. We'll post that link. Feel free to reach out to myself, to Brandon, or to Jen with any questions you have.
Sorry if you're asking questions right now. We can't see it.
But we're going to get to those when we're done. So appreciate you guys, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you all.
I don't know how to end it either.
You get to look at us going through here. How did you touch this thing?
I don't know. Here, there we go. Thank you, guys.